This week, the trial finally ended. We're now waiting for the jury. The jury has been out since about noon on Friday. We don't know how long they'll take. Today, I want to talk about some of the questions I've gotten on my various posts and videos, and I want to answer some of your questions. If you have any, be sure to put them in the chat or the comments. I want to start with a question I've gotten from a lot of people, which is, how long is the jury going to take? How long are we going to have to wait? And the answer is, of course, we don't know. We don't know for sure. But I would guess, my best guess is that it's going to be a little bit. And the reason I think that is a couple of things. The first and most important is that the jury has every knowledge that this is a case that the entire world is watching. They are not supposed to be looking at TV. They're not supposed to be on the internet. They're not supposed to be looking at videos about it. But they cannot help but notice how many people are sitting in the courtroom, how many people are waiting outside the courthouse when they come. So they can't help but see that there are a lot of people interested in this case. And that is going to make them feel like, it being so important, they need to take their time. They need to do whatever it takes to make sure they get the answer right because people are watching them. For some of the jurors, it may be, a chance to do something that they consider extremely important. And so they may want to spend a lot of time for it that way. And Mario notes something, they have trouble making a decision. That is also a possibility. It could take time just for that. The fact is that I would guess they're going to be at least waiting through Tuesday. I just can't imagine that it would be longer. Remember, they have Monday off. Monday is a holiday here in the United States, and hello to Australia. But in the United States, we have Memorial Day on Monday. So the jury didn't meet today. They won't meet tomorrow, Sunday, and they won't meet on Monday. So, and I see a question from Pit Clues. Is it realistic for them to keep themselves absolutely isolated? It's not entirely realistic, no. But what they're supposed to do is not be isolated from the world. They're just supposed to be isolated from the case. So if they turned on the TV or turned on the computer, looked at YouTube, and something popped up about the Depp trial, they're supposed to look away, not pay attention, not worry about that. So it's not that they avoid everything, it's just that they avoid that. So another question I've gotten is, what is the jury going to have with them? And someone's asking me about the large number of Asians on the jury. That was unusual. I don't know what the percentage of the demographic is in that area, and I don't know how it will affect things. But I did notice that I think more than half of the jurors are Asian. I have no idea what that will mean ultimately to what's decided on the case. So some people have asked me, okay, what's the jury going to have with them? They're going to have three things. They're going to have the instructions that the judge made written out, typed out on a piece of paper. They're also going to have the trial exhibit, so the actual pieces of paper that are available for like photographs or any kind of documents, text messages. They're going to have that. And then the third thing they're going to have is a laptop. Now, the judge explained today that there are only Friday, there are only two folders going to be on that laptop. The first folder is Johnny Depp's audio and video files, and the second folder is Amber Heard's audio and video files. It's not going to be anything more than that. It's not even going to be electronic exhibits. So that's all that's going to be on the computer. Now, I got a really good question from Ilse Lombard, who asked me, are the jurors furnished with a transcript of all the witnesses' testimony too? The answer is no, they're not. They're not given the depositions or a transcript of what happened live at trial. Now, part of the reason that they're not given the depositions is it kind of wouldn't be fair. If what they did was get the transcript of depositions, but not the live testimony, because of course they can't bring a witness back in the jury room with them and talk to the witness. But if what they look at is depositions only, then that's kind of unfair because it overly emphasizes the deposition testimony. So they don't have any transcripts back there. It's sort of the equivalent, you may remember, when Dr. Hughes kept wanting to look at her notes, and the judge said, no, you can't look at your notes. You have to just testify from your memory. That's what they're supposed to do too. They are not given a transcript, but it's a great question. I also got a question from Michelle Bork. Does each juror get a laptop, or is there one laptop for the group? And based on what the judge said, she said they were loading up the laptop, and she wanted the two sides to come look at the laptop. And so my guess is that it's going to be just one laptop for the whole group. So does it stay at the courthouse, or can they take it home? Michelle asked. It's going to stay at the courthouse. It won't leave at all. No one will be allowed to take that home. So those are great questions, and thank you, Michelle. Also got a question about alternate jurors. You may remember that when we started the trial, there were 11 jurors, and then along the way, 2 got dismissed for various reasons. So there were 9 left. The judge explained Friday that the numbers had been placed in an envelope in the very beginning of the trial, and that she was now going to announce which 2 were not going to actually be jurors. And number 3 and number 14 were made alternates. I mean, I think you can imagine what it would be like to be a juror and have sat through that entire trial, be so interested in it, and that, and yet then suddenly you find out you're an alternate and you don't even get to do anything related to the trial or the deliberation. It would just be honestly so upsetting. But in this case, the jurors have to stay present, not present in the courthouse, but they have to stay isolated from any kind of outside. I feel bad for them too, Joseph. They have to stay isolated from anything outside what's happening. And they aren't allowed to look at video. They aren't allowed to look at YouTube or TV, anything related to the trial, just like the regular jurors. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that they are trying to make sure that if they lose a juror, they can still bring in one of the alternates. Because the only thing worse, I guess, than having alternates who don't get to sit on it is having to do the trial all over again because you didn't have enough jurors and somebody got sick or had a kid who got sick. So they're trying to avoid that. And that's the reason for the alternates. So there will be 7 on the jury. Now here in the US, we're used to 12 people on a jury. That's not the case in every state anymore. And in Virginia, 7 is how many they're using. So Connor asked me a really good question. What's a counterclaim? Thank you, Connor, for that really great question. A counterclaim is, well, let me even start earlier. The plaintiff sues the defendant and makes a claim. The plaintiff is the one who brings the case. Well, the defendant is going to defend against that claim. But in some cases, the defendant might also have its own claim. So the defendant might want to make a claim against the plaintiff. The defendant can many times bring that same claim in that same lawsuit, but it's a totally different claim. It's different. And so since all the parties are there, the idea is, yeah, it makes sense to handle that in the same lawsuit and just get it over with. So the defendant's lawsuit is called a counterclaim because it's in the same lawsuit where the claim is. It's separate though. And yes, it is possible, and we'll talk about that. Let's talk about that. It's possible for the defendant to win the counterclaim and the plaintiff to lose the claim, or the other way around. Either of those things could happen. So Reed Books asked me, would malice have to be proven? Yes, in this case, because both of the parties are considered to be public figures, then the element of defamation has to include the element of malice. The malice is whether you know it was false and had reckless disregard as to whether it was false. So the idea is defamation is where you say a defamatory statement about somebody. Malice is where you say it knowing it was false or with reckless disregard as to whether it was true. So welcome everybody. We've got a lot of new people coming into the stream, so welcome. And please, if you would, hit that subscribe button so you can come back for more. This channel is all about the intersection of law and life. So thank you very much. And thank you for the super chat, Pit Clues. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for saying I'm doing a great job. I appreciate it. So Jesus Saves asked me a question. Why were there objections during JD's closing argument? Very good question. And the answer is because I think she realized that's very unusual. She or he, I'm not sure which, realized that's very unusual because normally it's considered really bad form by lawyers to make an objection during the closing argument. That's a time when the lawyers are allowed a lot of latitude. They're allowed to talk pretty freely, to make pretty strong arguments. And in this case, they did. But the question is, why were there objections? I don't know if you noticed, Ben Chu, when the objection was made, seemed pretty upset when Ben Rottenborn made the objection right in the middle of his closing. He seemed very upset, came back. As I was saying, he was clearly upset. But then Ben objected 4 different times during Elaine Bredehoff's. So, it does happen. It's considered really bad form. Lawyers would never do that unless I think maybe a couple of things is about to happen. If somebody's about to get into evidence that the court ruled out, and I think that's why Ben Rottenborn did his objection. But also, I think that it might happen if you feel like the person it's usually you're trying to stop them from saying something or get an instruction to the jury that says, look, you aren't allowed to say that even in closing arguments. It has to be something pretty significant. It would not be something you would normally do. Lawyers really frown on that because closing argument is kind of your time and it's carefully scripted and prepared. And you saw particularly with Elaine how it kind of threw her off. When she came back and tried to talk, it just wasn't the same. It interrupted her flow. So it's not good form. You only do it if you have a real emergency and you have to. And I will say that it looked like the one against Ben Chu was overruled, and at least a couple of the ones objections during Elaine Bredehoff's time were sustained. So I guess they were legitimate ones. So Grenand asked me, do the jury members go home to meet their family each day? Oh, that's a really interesting question. And the answer in this case is yes. I have had a case before where the jury was sequestered. Literally, they put them up at a hotel. They were gone from their family for, weeks, and they weren't allowed to go home. But in this case, the jury members go home. And so Grenand asked, well, why don't I see the jury? That's because there's an order from the court that the jury cannot be shown. No one can show the jury either sitting in the box or going in and out of the courthouse. And furthermore, their names are going to be withheld and kept confidential for an entire year following the trial. So they're going to have a full year of protection if they don't want anybody to contact them. I guess the judge is hoping at the end of a year, maybe people won't be as, interested in it, and it's less likely that they'll be hounded or harassed. Of course, that does not stop jury members from coming forward just because they thought it would be something that would be fun or they thought they could get some publicity. That could happen, but their names won't be released by the court. So, and Grenand also asked, are the jury not allowed to have a social life? Like, could they meet with family or watch the news or internet? Well, the answer is that they are limited on that. They can go out, they can go to parties, the neighborhood barbecue, they can do all those sorts of things. But what they can't do is talk about the case to anybody or watch the news if it's about the case or watch a YouTube channel if it's talking about the case. All of those things are not allowed. So somebody asked me, what's the trial about? Defamation, plain and simple, on both sides, the claim and the counterclaim. And the 3 issues are publication, that is, whether it was published, and actionable statement. Was it defamatory and false, what was said? And then there's the requisite intent, which is, as I said a minute ago, malice in this case, because they are both public figures. So, and that means that the statement has to have been made knowing that it was false or with reckless disregard as to whether or not it was true. So now, what is Johnny suing about? Somebody asked me that. Well, there are three claims or 3 statements that were made in the 2018 op-ed by Amber Heard. The first was, I spoke up against SV and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. Then 2 years ago, I became a public figure representing DV. Actually, she said DA, but DV is a little more common. Most people know what I'm referring to. I'm trying to be a little cryptic because YouTube is very concerned about exactly the words. I have yet to have had a live stream get monetized because I've been talking about this case. So, and it's hard to talk about the case without using the actual words used in the complaint. So, and the third thing was I had the rare vantage point of seeing in real time how institutions protect men accused of DA or DV. So Amber, on the other hand, is suing over statements made by Johnny's attorney, Alan Waldman. In April of 2020, Alan Waldman told the Daily Mail that Amber Heard and her friends were using fake SV allegations as both a sword and a shield. Fake SV allegations. And then he also told the Daily Mail that this was an ambush, a hoax, and then later called it abuse hoax. So all of those things are part of what Amber is suing about. Her counterclaim against Johnny is a completely separate claim. So, and I do want to talk about that. Isabel Rankin asked me, so in effect, could both sides win? The answer is weirdly yes, that is actually possible. It's also possible that in theory, both sides could lose. So let's talk about that. Let's say Amber successfully proved that Waldman defamed her when he said that this was abuse hoax, and it wasn't abuse hoax, or even, let's get more specific, because he talked to them about how she and her friends spilled wine, roughed up the place, and called the police back. Let's say the jury said, we believe that, then Amber could win on her counterclaim. At the same time, if Johnny proved that Amber defamed him when he said that, remember what Alan Waldman said was sort of unpinned to anything Johnny Depp had done. So if instead Johnny argues that, or wins on Amber defamed him when she said he was guilty of SV or DV, then in that case, what you could have is a really weird situation where both of them won. I think it's not very likely, to be honest, just because I think in this case, if the jury finds and believes one side, it's not very likely to believe the other. I just don't think that's too likely to happen. It is possible. I just don't think it's something that we are likely to see. Now, is it possible for both of them to lose? I think that's possible. I think it's possible because the standard is so high, because the standard is malice, because the standard relates to defamation and is very particular to particular statements that were made. Yes, it's possible that both sides could lose. Will that happen? We are just going to have to wait and see. One of the things I've learned over the years is that jury comes down to 7 people. We don't even know much about them. We know their age roughly. We don't know their names. We only know their age roughly. We know their apparent racial profile based on what somebody in the courtroom stated. We know very little about them. And then we know their juror number. So what we are going to have to do is wait and see what those 7 people do. They are the 7 most important people in the case right this minute. So, and then let's see. Will the jury take public opinion into account? They should not. They're not supposed to. They're not supposed to pay any attention or even know about public opinion. So no, they shouldn't be doing anything that relates to finding out public opinion or taking that into account. It's supposed to be completely separate, just the jury deciding on its own. This was a good one. Can Amber's sister Whitney or her friends get in trouble for lying under oath? The answer is yes, that is possible, but it is very unlikely. It's unlikely for a couple of reasons. One is, well, several. This is a civil case. It isn't a criminal case, so there's no direct charges that are going to be brought from this case. There's no direct criminal implication. Also, you've got the fact that for what particularly Whitney or Amber's friends said, there's not somebody who comes in and directly contradicts them. There was some possibility that, as you might know, there was a woman named Jennifer Howell. Jennifer Howell was supposed to come in. That might have contradicted Whitney, but her testimony really didn't turn out the way it was kind of expected to. So, I don't think there's been like enough of a direct contradiction for somebody, to be charged with perjury in this case. And then thirdly, it's just really doesn't happen in a civil case. I mean, it really doesn't. It would be so unusual for a witness just a witness, not even a party, to be referred for prosecution about testimony. It's just very, very unusual. So I would not expect that to happen. So I got a question. Okay, Amber Heard looks at the jury all the time. Like, what is up with that? And was that a bad move on her part? And the answer is that for many years, there's been a strong belief that you should look at the jury. Why? Because the lawyer who's talking to you isn't going to decide your case. The jury is going to decide your case. So it kind of makes sense when you're giving an answer to turn and talk to the jury. Now, I did think Amber somewhat overused it. For example, she would say, Camille Vasquez would say, did you read this? Yes. Did you see this? No. And so every time, there was this sort of dramatic turn. To me, it makes more sense if the witness does it when the witness is giving sort of a full answer, like several sentences or something like that. Maybe not every time you say yes or no in response to a question, but I am positive that Amber Heard got that advice from her lawyers, and they told her, look at the jury. The jury's making the decision, not me, not your lawyer. So talk to them. Try to get them on board. I can't help you once the case rests. So that's why she looked at the jury so much, as she was trying to make that connection with them and to persuade them, since they're going to decide the case. And as I say, she may have overused it a bit. You will notice the expert witnesses mostly did that too. They'd be asked a question and they would turn and talk to the jury. Again, same sort of philosophy. The idea is that the point of it is that you need to talk to the jury that's going to be making the decision. Okay, next question. Is it possible there's really important, I love this question, there's really important evidence like an audio that neither side wants to show? Oh yes, that is entirely possible. It is entirely possible that somebody would be interested in getting a piece of evidence in, but it has too many negative things about it attached to it for both sides. And so they both decide, make the choice not to use it. Yeah, that's entirely possible. It definitely happens. Not only can happen, that happens. That there's a piece of evidence that's just too explosive. Neither side wants to use it because it could hurt both sides. Why didn't Johnny Depp's team press the charity donation more? Interesting. Because I did a whole video on that. Y'all should check that out. About the $7 million that didn't go to charity. That is, in my opinion, a pretty huge issue for Amber because of the fact that truth is all important in this case. Who told the truth, who lied, really matters. And so the fact that Amber Heard told the world that she was going to give this full $7 million to charity and then didn't, that is really important. The fact that she didn't give that money and she told everybody she was going to, I think matters to her credibility. And it wasn't just the fact that she told the public that first year. She repeated that. She repeated that in a declaration to the UK court. That's very significant because the UK court relied on it. The court said, why, look, this is the kind of woman who gives all her money to charity. Of course she's believable. That was really important. It wasn't just something small or something fake. And then also she told a Dutch TV show that. She was asked for it. She said, yes, they played a clip of it. You may remember, I actually gave that money, donated, past tense. I think that was a very important point. They hit it home, though, again, in closing. So I think they did bring it home. I agree that it's super important, though. I really liked that. That question. Can Johnny smiling and laughing at trial hurt him? Possibly. Yes, possibly. Why do I say that? Well, remember, Amber made a big point of it, didn't she? When she got up on her second set of testimony and cross-examination, Amber started talking about the fact that, yeah, smiling and laughing, he thinks it's all a joke. I think this is really serious. So, Yeah, and then you remember Amber's attorney followed that up too when she cross-examined Johnny. Said, or he, you just laugh and you think this is all funny. That was I believe Ben Rottenborn. So it can hurt. It definitely can hurt. As I looked at him, I didn't read it as he was smirking and laughing at the testimony. I read it as he smiled or laughed when something funny was said, or when he was like, I cannot believe that's being said about me. So I didn't read it the way sort of the implication was. When I saw him doing it, I thought it was appropriate. My guess is that that's how the jury's going to see it too. I didn't think he was laughing at the process or laughing at Amber's accusations at all. I didn't get that from it. So, okay, somebody asked me this. Were there any mistakes by the Johnny Depp team? Yeah, I would say a couple. I don't fully understand or know. I don't think what exactly led to Jennifer Howell not coming in like she should have. I was really counting on that. I thought it was going to be extremely important. If you don't know who Jennifer Howell is, Jennifer Howell was the boss of Whitney, Amber's sister, and also a friend of hers. In fact, Whitney stayed with her when she stopped living with Johnny and with Amber. So, and apparently Whitney told Jennifer Howell a completely different version of the events. That would have been admissible against what Whitney had said. Apparently, from what I read, there was some issue about whether or not the proper foundation had been laid. Whitney had to be asked about that letter. I don't know if that's the reason why Jennifer Howell's testimony was so short and didn't really come in. I don't know if that's ultimately what happened, but it was a shame because it was really strong testimony about what exactly Whitney did and didn't say right after the event, because Whitney even told Jennifer Howell a completely different version of the staircase incident, and that she was protecting Johnny from Amber. Not that, Amber or she was being attacked by Johnny Depp. So obviously it would have been very important if that could have come in. There was a statement from Jennifer Howell as well as a letter, both of which had a lot of information in, and it never really happened. It was quite a disappointment, I thought. So potentially, I don't know the full facts behind why that didn't come in, but potentially that was a mistake. The other thing I thought was risky was putting Johnny Depp back on the stand. It's always scary as a lawyer to put your witness back on the stand, your party, because you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen, especially if they did really well in the first round, which I think Johnny did. I think Johnny did really well. It's always a risk to put your client back up there, because if they mess up, that's another issue. Suddenly now you have to deal with problems you didn't have before. And I think there was some really tough cross by Ben Rottenborn. I thought that was his strongest of the entire trial. That was his strongest point. So I think that was, risky. I know why they did it. They thought there were a few things they needed to button up about the counterclaim. So I understand that. And, they got those buttoned up so it was safe, probably from appeal. It was probably safer that way. But it also carried risk and had some consequences for Johnny. So welcome to all the new people in the live stream. I'm really glad to have you here. And I do want to ask, please subscribe. I'd love to see you back. This channel is all about the intersection of law and life. This week we're talking about, and for weeks now, we've been talking about the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial. So please subscribe. I'd love to have you back as a regular viewer. Hit that like button if you would. And so thank you for watching. Let's see. I want to go through to see whether there have been some questions in the chat while I've been... hello to Australia. Good to have you. Let's see what else there's been. Why can't you bring up... Why was the son's trial brought up? So you may have noticed that carefully, the lawyers never actually mentioned the fact that there was a verdict in the Sun trial that was in favor of the Sun newspaper. They didn't do that because the judge wouldn't allow that. That wasn't in evidence. But where it kept coming in was when there would be testimony in that case that would contradict what somebody said here. So if there was a deposition or some kind of trial testimony or statement or declaration, in that case, it could be brought in here to contradict what somebody said. And ultimately, quite a lot got in. The closing argument had a lot about the son and had a lot about what was about that trial, a whole lot about it. So that ultimately became pretty important. So the case itself, just never almost would you know how lawyers can't just say never, period. They always have to say never almost, but never would you have something where you would tell the jury about the result in another case if it might influence them. You just aren't allowed to do that because you want this jury deciding this case. There wouldn't be a new case if they were identical. So the very fact that there's another case means there's something new to be decided, and you don't want what they decide to be influenced or affected by what they were told. So that's the reason, that you have that. And that's the reason why it wouldn't come in. So it didn't come in its entirety. You never heard anybody say why, they walked right up to the edge of saying, you lost that case, but it was different. It was a different case. And so that's why it wasn't allowed in. It wasn't allowed to influence Johnny Depp's case here, just because that happened in the UK. And may I say, the procedures, the courts, the issues, all of those were very different in those two cases. It absolutely should not be admitted here. So let's see. What does it say about jury selection that there's... Okay, I already answered that, I think. Somebody's talking about a new tape. That'll be interesting. I'll look forward to hearing that. Appeal. Oh, such a good question. Will there be an appeal? And the answer is... sorry, I'm doing two things at once. Will there be an appeal? I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure whether there will be an appeal, but I think it would probably be pretty likely. Have there been issues to go up on appeal? This judge has done an unbelievable job. I mean, she has buttoned it down hard. If there has ever been a case that has been carefully prepared by the judge to prevent appeal, it would be this one. Nonetheless, absolutely. She had to make call after call after call. Any one of those things could be a grounds for appeal. A lot of the things around defamation per se, malice, what testimony was admitted or not admitted, yeah, all of that definitely can be something that she will have to ultimately deal with after an appeal. Could it be reversed? Yeah, possible, very possible. An appellate court is going to be reluctant to do that because they know, just like the rest of us, the amount of work that's gone into this and all of the press and the media and how hard Judge Asgarati worked on this case. It was a tremendous amount of work. So the appellate court is going to be reluctant to do anything to overturn this case. But there are plenty of places where it can be done. Absolutely. Appeal is very possible. I would say appeal is likely. I think whether it gets overturned on appeal is possible. So thank you for the super chat. Let's take a look at that. Law nerds are wondering whether JD was called up so that Amber Heard would insist on being called up too. Oh, very interesting. I do not know. I don't know if you noticed this when they did a sidebar right before, I think it was lunch, and I can't even remember the time of day, but they did a sidebar, and it was right as they were about to go into their last witness or two, and Camille Vasquez turned around, and she just had this huge smile on her face, and then right after that, shortly after that, they put Amber Heard back up. And I thought I know what she was excited about. She was like, yes, they're putting Amber Heard back up. And wow, I mean, she nailed it home. It was fantastic. You may remember a minute ago, I talked about how risky it was to have put Johnny Depp back on the stand. Also, equally risky to put Amber Heard back on the stand, and it did not pay off. Big risk, did not pay off. I think that was a big mistake, but That is so interesting. Maybe called up so that Amber Heard would have to come. I don't know. I don't know. That is such an interesting question. Thank you for the chat. So let's see. Trying to answer a few more questions. I really appreciate you all coming in. Please, if you would, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you back. I talk on this channel about the intersection of life and law. Of course, right now, where everybody's talking about Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard, so that's what I'm talking about. Somebody asked me, no full transcript for the jury deliberations. Why not? The answer is that it's considered to be something that people need to pay attention to in the trial testimony, and there shouldn't be undue influence by allowing people to have the transcript back. I'll be honest, a lot of it goes back to the fact that until very, very recently, you couldn't get a transcript of the trial the same day. I mean, court reporters carefully took it down, and it took, days and days to turn that into a transcript. So there was no possibility that you could get the actual trial transcript and take it back into a jury room with you, because it wouldn't be ready. Sometimes for months, literally months, it would take to get that trial transcript all typed up and correct. So it was considered just really unfair to let a deposition go back if the live testimony didn't go back. And there wasn't going to be a transcript for that. So the deposition couldn't go back either. It would put undue influence on the people, it would just put priority on the depositions instead of the people who came live. Nowadays, that's still the rule, that testimony does not go back with the jury. I frankly wonder if that ought to change, because I think it would be very helpful for the jury to be able to look that up, and for the lead jury to be able to say, for the jury to be able to say, I think she said such and such. I think she said such and such. Let's look at the transcript. I think another reason, though, may be that theoretically a transcript could be wrong, particularly one being turned around really fast, same day or within a day or two. And so the jury might have a memory of something, and they might be right, and the transcript might be wrong. So the idea is that you have to rely on what you actually have sitting there. You can't just rely on the fact that you have a piece of paper in front of you. They don't give you that, and you're not allowed to have that. All right, let's see what else we have. Questions-wise. Judge is really strict on hearsay. I agree with that. The judge is extremely strict on hearsay. And, while hearsay is generally true across the board everywhere, there are some differences in the states and how they're done, and how hearsay is ruling. But she's quite strict on it. I totally agree with that. Hi from South Africa. Southern accent. All right, I'll admit that. So again, somebody asking about, did they bait Johnny for Amber? Was he the bait for Amber Heard to get on the stand? What an interesting question. I don't know. Let's see what else. From Sweden. Oh, hello. That's interesting. If Johnny wins his case, does that give him grounds to sue Disney for wrongful termination? I would say no. I would say that can't really happen. That has to be on separate grounds. He can't get grounds from anything that happens in this case to take that and sue somebody else. That's got to stand on its own. So if he's going to sue Disney based on the idea that they are doing something to wrongfully terminate him, he's going to have to do that separately. He's going to have to but could he use facts from this case? Oh yeah, or testimony from this case to cross-examine witnesses in that case? Absolutely, he sure could. What I think is more likely to happen is he wants a good relationship with Disney, so I don't think he's very likely to sue them. I think instead he's going to go back to them and say, look at all this movement behind me. Look at all the support I have. Look at all the people who turned out to support me and to cheer for me even when I was accused of these terrible things. So this shows I have the popularity you need to put me back in movies, to put me back in family value movies. You can safely trust that the fans are support me and are behind me. So I think that's more likely to happen with Disney. That's my best bet. I think he'll try to go for the smooth, let's work together approach. So if you're coming in, please hit that like button, and I'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. So I'm looking through for questions. Oh, if you have a question, put question marks at the beginning, and that'll help me notice your questions. Oh, somebody talking about the trailer park. I did a whole video on the trailer park. That was absolutely fabulous testimony. I called it trailer trashed. So be sure to look that video up after we get off the live stream. It was a lot of fun to do. That was absolutely fantastic testimony. The way that whole issue turned around was fantastic. For those of you who don't know about the trailer issue, the original, there was a story by Amber Heard, testimony by Amber Heard about an incident where she, Johnny, and her friends all went to a trailer park for fun. It's kind of like an Airbnb for trailers. And so they went to that and spent the night there. It went way south. There was this crazy behavior from Johnny where he threatened to break a girl's wrist, or, talked about grabbed it, talked about how much pressure it would take to break it. It horribly abused Amber. He was wrecked the trailer. And according to Amber Heard, the manager was extremely upset with what was happening and with how damaged his trailer was. And Johnny Depp's team brought the person who was the owner and manager of the trailer and who said, no such trash, no such problem. So go look at that video. You'll really enjoy that. So be sure to put question marks at the beginning too if you have a question, and I'll try to get to everything. Why did they have Johnny's text but not Amber's? So I think they did. I don't know for sure whether they had any texts from Amber and they just weren't used or weren't considered important, or whether perhaps they just didn't have them if she had maybe changed phones. That doesn't seem too likely since she still had photographs. So I can't answer that. I don't know why there weren't more text messages from Amber. Maybe she just didn't write as interesting text messages as Johnny Depp did. So that maybe it's just that. Thank you, Crystal, for subscribing. I appreciate that. Suing a corporation more difficult than another individual? Well, I guess that's an interesting question. It's typically pretty expensive to sue a corporation because the corporation can hire lawyers. They have deeper pockets. So it can be more difficult than suing an individual. As far as suing an individual, though, if they have money, then they can essentially do the same thing, hire a lot of lawyers, a lot of experts, and it can be essentially the same thing. But yeah, probably harder to sue, I would say, a corporation. Has the judge already ruled on the motion for sanctions? I don't know. Very good question. I don't know the answer to that. Can the UK judgment be overturned in light of new evidence of falsified documents and pictures? I will tell you one thing I thought about was, what about the fact that the UK judge said Amber gave all this money? That speaks so highly of her, so obviously she's the kind of person who can be trusted. And now we have proof that that declaration itself was false. The answer in practical terms is no. Johnny's already appealed. He lost. Nothing's going to happen to that. Were there some problems? Does it make the verdict look, more suspect? Yes, now that we know some more information. But is it going to be overturned? I would say the chances are like virtually zero. So I just don't see that happening. All right, let's see what else we have. Questions-wise, I'm looking for questions in here, so be sure to put your question marks at the beginning. Role of the judge in preparation. Oh, wow. This judge was so prepared. I tell you, when we first came in, I thought, she seems kind of a little too strict. I don't know, how I feel about her. I will tell you what, by the end of the trial, my hat is off to the judge. She was absolutely phenomenal. She just instantly ruled on stuff. She had complete command of it. That was run like clockwork. That trial was smooth. It was so well done. I was really impressed with how she handled it. She had hard rulings. Will it be possibly reversible? Yes. Any judge can make a mistake. Sometimes it's not even a mistake. It's a new ruling by the appellate court saying, this is how we want the law to be applied. This is how we think it should have been. But wow, she was fantastic. I mean, she absolutely did an awesome job. Very impressed. Hats off. Kudos. I don't think I answered the whole question. Oh, more about what the role of the judge is. The preparation for a judge is immense in advance if you run a court like this judge does. because you have to hear all of those arguments in advance. So many things were ruled on before we ever got to court, or ruled on before court or after court, or on Fridays when the cameras were turned off. There were so many hours that she spent looking at the case, looking at the arguments of the two sides. So in this case, it was a massive amount of work. And again, hats off. So how come JD's team never got access to Amber's devices, but Amber's expert did? I can't really answer that. I don't really know, I don't really know the circumstances there. I think I already answered Measurett's question. Do you think there were no sanctions so that the case... I'll have to come back to that one. I'm not quite sure. Lily asked me, do you think there were no sanctions on Amber Heard for not providing her devices so that the case was not delayed further? Oh, I think what you're asking me is, did Johnny Depp's lawyers just withdraw the request for sanctions for not providing her devices just to get the case moving? That may be it. I don't really know the circumstances. How much money would the lawyers get? Well, that is a good question. I don't know the hourly rate there. Both sides of lawyers, I would imagine, are being paid on an hourly basis. Very unlikely they took it on contingency. And I'm guessing it would be, hundreds of dollars per hour for every lawyer sitting in that courtroom. And that was a lot of lawyers. And I don't know if you remember, at least once, Ben Chu said, or Ben, I don't remember which Ben, one of the Bens said, yeah, we've got somebody, back at the office working on this. And so you saw the tip of the iceberg on the lawyers. You saw 6 lawyers up to sitting there at any given time. Sometimes there were a couple on the back row. There were jury consultants there. You don't even know necessarily who those are. And then there were lawyers working back at the office who were doing sort of the paperwork and stuff like that. So, yes, lots of lawyers. I mean, it would have been immensely expensive. I don't know if you remember in both the opening statement and closing argument, Elaine Bredehoff said that Amber Heard had spent $6 million on her attorneys in the case. And you kind of saw Camille Vasquez start a turn to Ben Chu, like, we could object to that. They didn't end up objecting to it, but anyway, that was one of the arguments, is that she had spent $6 million on that. Wasn't the hashtag evidence influencing the jury? I don't know what you mean by the hashtag evidence. Maybe if you can write something a little more, I can answer that. How come Amber doesn't have to pay for her own lawyers? I think she did. I think she did have to pay for her own lawyers, and that was what it wasn't testimony. Nobody said that. It's just that they announced it in opening and closing. So I think she did pay, and I think she paid a lot of money on that. The Heard team seemed to know the case. I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, good. Thanks for putting the question marks at the beginning. I really appreciate that. Do I think that Amber's lawyers actually believe her? Interesting question. Pete, thank you. I would say probably yes. I would say that, because they argued it very passionately and I think very well. I think both of them were good lawyers and argued it really well. So I would say, yeah, they probably do believe that. And they had evidence and they brought their evidence well. So that would be my best bet, is that they do believe it. What did you think when the TMZ lawyer showed up? Oh my gosh, that was so fun. That was just really fun when the TMZ lawyer showed up, because that issue is just absolutely fascinating. And the TMZ evidence really made a huge difference in this case. For those of you who aren't fully up on it, TMZ published a photograph of Amber Heard sitting outside the courtroom while she was about to get her temporary restraining order against Johnny Depp. And she had a mark on her face, which Amber Heard's team claims is indications that Johnny Depp hit her. So that TMZ wanted to keep all of anything related to their source out. They actually asked to intervene in the case, like become a party in the case. And the judge is like, you can't be a party. What do you have to do with this? But their essential point was, we want to stop this guy who's our ex-employee from coming in and talking, because he doesn't represent us. That's not fair. And so we don't want this guy talking. We haven't approved him. That's their argument. And nonetheless, the judge ruled against them and allowed the witness to testify. Now, the witness testified that TMZ received a tip saying, show up at the courthouse. There's going to be, Amber Heard's going to be there and you should get a picture from this angle. So they were there, got the picture from that angle. The witness also said that they received a video. You remember the Johnny smashing things video, as Amber Heard called it, where he's in the kitchen wearing the pirate hat and he's slamming the doors to the kitchen cabinets that have glass on them and the glass breaks. And so TMZ got that video. And according to the witness, TMZ, within just 15 minutes, published it. And the TMZ witness, ex-employee, I should say, the ex-employee said, we couldn't do that unless we were certain that we had the right to do it, that we were given that video by the person who owned it. So we must have gotten it from a person who owned it. And furthermore, TMZ claims copyright on that. It's not just that TMZ had the right to publish it one time, someone gave them permission. TMZ claims it owns the video, which, since the video was taken by Amber Heard on her computer, the question then became, how did TMZ get ownership rights to a video that Amber Heard took and was on Amber Heard's computer? Same question for, how did TMZ know that Amber Heard was going to show up at the courthouse? They should take a picture from this angle. And how did they know to show up for her first deposition to take a picture, and then again her second deposition? Well, Amber Heard's argument is, I have no idea. I don't know how they got there. I didn't have anything to do with that. It was nothing to do with me. Then the argument from Johnny Depp's team is, that's just not believable. I mean, clearly that had to have had something. There had to have been something you were doing that tipped them off. There would be no way they could know about it otherwise. So that's what I thought when the TMZ lawyer showed up. I'm like, oh, this is so good, so interesting. Do I think any evidence was Johnny's or all Amber's? And I think you're asking me, was some of the evidence like clearly on one side and was some of the evidence clearly on other sides? I mean, it probably went both ways, but there were a lot of pieces that ultimately ended up hurting Amber on credibility. We just saw that over and over again. So I don't think, I don't know. I being a lawyer, of course, I'll have to say, oh, it depends, right? So it depends on the particular piece of evidence. So maybe a little too broad for me to answer. Remember, I have the lawyer background. I can't help myself. What if there's a hung jury? And if there is a true hung, well, first of all, if what they do is they come back and they say we can't make a decision, then the judge gives them what's usually called a dynamite charge. And the judge says, get back in there and try again. Don't give up. You got to get this done. It's all up to you. Everybody has been sitting through 6 weeks of trial and you need to make a decision. Go. And that's what normally would happen. If after that they come back, she might make them come back several times and they still say we can't make a decision. Well, if it finally hits that point, then ultimately the jury will be dismissed and the case, there is no resolution in the case. The case would have to be retried. Brutal proposition for everyone. So the judge will do absolutely anything to avoid that, as you can imagine. How long, in my experience, is a jury likely to take to come up with a verdict? I mentioned a little bit about that earlier, but I think it'll be a few days. I don't think it'll be, maybe, well, I don't know. Of course, the lawyer, it depends answer, but I think it'll take a little bit. And part of the reason is the pressure, because they know the whole world is watching. Even though they're supposed to avoid any contact with the outside world or TV, they know, because they see all the people in the courtroom, they see all the people outside the courthouse. They fully know that this is an important case. Plus, they've heard of Johnny Depp, and they know that Depp and Heard, that's a big thing. They already know that. So they're not going to want to look like they just went back there and said, no, yeah, just whatever, and they just came up with an answer. They're going to want to look like they took it seriously. They're probably going to want to go through all the evidence and take a look at that, make sure that we see everything. So I think they'll take some time. Also, you've got the fact that there are two different cases here. There's the claim by Johnny Depp and the counterclaim by Amber Heard, and those are different. So they have to fill out, that was an extensive jury verdict form, and they have to fill it out for each of those statements, and then they have to argue about damages or decide about damages. If they decide that either side wins, they have to go to damages. So I think it's likely to take quite a number of days. So welcome to the live stream, everybody. Thank you for coming in. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about the intersection of law and life. And of course, we've been talking about Depp v. Heard all week, and we'll be again next week. So next question, verdict prediction. No. You can't ask a lawyer to do that. It's just not fair. No lawyer is going to do that. No. Just no. Okay. What about the airport lady? She was good. I really agree with you. I thought the airport lady was really good because she was just, she had a good memory. She was very matter of fact. I thought that was some pretty powerful testimony. I agree with you. She was probably overlooked, wasn't she? When people did summaries, but that was pretty strong. If any of you weren't following it, the airport lady talked about the incident between Amber Heard and Tasha Van Ree, her ex, in which, Amber Heard was accused of hitting Tasha, and it was something that showed that there was a background for Amber Heard of having hit other people. And so I thought it was pretty important. I really agree with you. What lawyer would believe Amber's story? Well, I understand your point. But you didn't, that wasn't what I was asked. I wasn't asked, what do I believe? I was asked, what will the jury do? So another question, you know how lawyers are. All right, let's see what else. Best lawyer, best witness. All right. Oh, that's good. That's a good question. All right. So I'm gonna have to do a duel on best lawyer. Camille Vasquez, of course, has to be one of the two. She was absolutely fantastic. Her cross of Amber was fantastic. It was surgical. I did another video on the cross-examination by Camille Vasquez, Hurricane Camille, I called it. So go check that one out after the live stream. But that video, I talked about how surgically she handled each of those things. She was so prepared, really brief, just crushed it, just really fantastic. And I thought her closing argument was great, really well done. But the person who came up strong toward the end, I would have to say, would be Ben Rotenborn. He did super well on the cross-examination of Johnny, and he did very well in his closing argument. I saw one commentator saying, he maybe did better than Camille just because of the fact that he had less to work with, and he still did really well. So, maybe that's true. But I thought they both were fantastic. I thought all of the lawyers were strong. There was no lawyer where I would say, wow, they just really screwed up. But I thought Camille was, maybe I would even have to put her first. She was so good. That cross-examination of Amber Heard was fantastic. Every time she got up for cross, you were like, yes, this is going to be really good. It's going to be crystal clear, really well done. What would I do? Oh, no, you can't ask me that. What does your gut tell you? My gut tells me, oh, no, I'm just not going to go there. Y'all are giving me a hard time on this. All right, all right, let's see. Is there anything else? Can he take her to court for spousal abuse, and can she get jail time if JD wins? Okay, answer is no. This is a civil case, not related to anything criminal. Now, could he press charges from the criminal side in California? In theory, maybe, but I think probably the statute of limitations will have run. I'm not sure what the statute would be for some of these issues. But it wouldn't be the case that he could take the jury verdict and use that as proof. He could take things that she said, like the fact that she admitted hitting him. That would be one thing. But he couldn't just take it and use it. It wouldn't be that clear. So let's see what else. When is a question objected to as leading and no foundation? Okay, leading is where you only hear that in one side. For example, if you're cross-examining a witness, you're allowed to lead them. You can say, isn't it true, Mr. Jones, that, you were there on the night of the murder? You can say that. You can lead because you're on cross-examination. But if it's your witness and you brought the witness, then the witness is on direct examination. And then you're supposed to just guide the witness in telling the story. you aren't allowed to cross-examine or to lead the witness. So leading is where you go ahead and tell the witness where you want the answer to go. So that's one thing. If it's a witness who's against you, you say, isn't it true that? And you've kind of told him, this is where I want you to go. He may disagree, but you've told him. But when you're on direct examination, you're not supposed to do that. What do you think the judge is believing? Oh, I also forgot, no foundation. No foundation means that this person either doesn't have the information or there hasn't been enough laid for this question to come in. An example would be maybe you have a document and you're like, what does paragraph 3 say of the document? Everybody's like, what document? First you have to say, okay, here's a document. Is this a document you know something about? Is this a true and correct copy of it? Okay, now let's ask you about paragraph 3. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. What do you think the judge is believing? I think that the judge started squarely in the Amber Heard camp and has changed. I think that the judge will, first of all, be very happy to get this case out of her courtroom, but I really think that the judge maybe has swung to the Johnny Depp side. That's what I've perceived. Should further action be taken to ensure the safety of her baby? That was really scary, actually, when she testified about someone having threatened to put her baby in a microwave. Like, wow, really? That's just terrifying. I mean, should something be done to protect her? Maybe, but there's no agency out there to do it, I don't think. It's just Amber, paying for some security on her own. So I don't see that. I don't see any government agency stepping up to do that or to help her. Who has a better chance of winning? Oh, all right. Y'all have asked a bunch. I do think Johnny Depp has a better chance of winning. So there. Okay. I wasn't supposed to say, but there you've gotten it out of me. You have gotten it out of me. If the lawyers were on opposing side, if Depp's lawyers represented Heard, that is such an interesting question. What if Ben Chu and Camille Vasquez represented Amber Heard, and then you had Ben Rotenborn and Elaine Bredehoff representing Johnny Depp? Such an interesting question. There is some degree to which things would change. I mean, the cross-examination of Johnny Depp, the first cross-examination of Johnny Depp just wasn't that strong. It just wasn't that good. It would have been way better if Camille Vasquez had been doing it. But the second one of Johnny Depp was pretty strong with Ben Rotenborn on that side. I think that the facts still would have outed. So I do think there would have been some difference because lawyers think different things are important and look at different matters. So yeah, there's some of that. All right, I missed a question. It was, do you think AH something? Skip to the end on me. So is there anybody else I've left off? So, if you have some questions, put them in the chat with question marks in front. What's the process for jury selection? Are there any requirements or minimal intelligence? No, not really. The requirement is you have to be age 18, you have to live in the area, and then they qualify you. And they qualify you by asking questions in voir dire. And voir dire is where the lawyer comes and asks questions and, talks individually to each of the jurors and ask questions, and they answer that. And from that, they pick the jury. Now, in this case, some of that was done in writing, and all of it was is the question. How could they own the rights? They could only own the rights, TMZ, if somebody who owned it sold it to them. And the fact that they published it within 15 minutes, the TMZ witness said, means that they believed they had the right to it. They believed they had it from somebody who had the right to give it to them. That leads back to the Amber Heard team. There's really no other explanation for how they got that. And that's why that testimony was so important. What, if any? Yes, that deserves a question. There was a lot of what, if any, wasn't there? And that's, again, what I was talking about, to try to keep from leading the witness. What you do is instead you try to make it clear that the testimony, that the question isn't telling them how to answer. The question is simply telling them, I want you to answer. Sorry, I get distracted. The question is simply telling them, give me your story, not telling them exactly where you want them to go. So I think that that's a difference. It seems like, let me double check. What happens if you don't respond to jury duty? Oh, that's not good. Here in what can happen is you theoretically could go to jail. A bench warrant can be issued for your arrest for not showing up for jury duty. And so you are absolutely supposed to show up for jury duty. And the courts take that really seriously because they have to. They have to have people show up for jury duty. All right, let's see if there's anybody else I missed. Thane, thank you for the super chat, Thane. I appreciate it. That is a really good point. What Thane is saying is that it's a farce to expect a non-sequester jury to avoid exposure in the information age. You're right. I mean, it'd be pretty hard. You pick up your phone, you press a button to watch the news, and what's the top news? The Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard trial. This is unusual. This case is so unusual because of how much coverage there is, but it would be almost impossible to miss the trial. I mean, it would be super hard. Okay, we're only going to be on for a few more minutes, so I'm not going to be able to answer all the questions. So please, if you have one, stick it in there fast. I'm going to get to as many as I possibly can. Please, if you would, subscribe to the channel. I've been talking about Depp v. Heard for quite a while now, but what I usually talk about is the intersection of law and life, which in this case is, of course, Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard. All right, so let's go. Do you think Camille did so well because of all the strong evidence? In part, yes. In part, yes. The evidence, you could be a great lawyer, and if you don't have evidence, it's just not going to help you. So I think that is, yes, I think that had a definite influence on it. If Amber Heard is found to have fabricated evidence, can she be in trouble? She can be, but I've said earlier, I don't think it's very likely that she's going to go to jail or anyone's for anything related to perjury, anything like that. I don't see that happening in this case. It's a civil case and not related to that. Is the baby microwave thing from a TV show? Well, I don't know. May have been. Why were things redacted? Well, a lot of times things were redacted because they were hearsay and there was no one to authenticate them. There was not a witness who was going to come into trial and talk about it. So if the jury is hung, how will they find an impartial jury for a retrial? Wow, that is a great question, Lorna. Lorna Doone, I'm sure that's what that is. So I think that they will have a super hard time. They will have a long voir dire where they will ask a lot of questions and they will ask about, what do you know about the case? What do you know about the parties? And the answer is everybody knows pretty much everything, right? It would be hard. From my understanding, jury only needs to make, sorry, I can't read that one. Do all the courtrooms have the jury box close to the plaintiff? Yes, it's considered sort of the way it's done that the jury box will be right by, that the plaintiff will sit nearest the jury. It's just done that way. Like a bride side, groom side in a wedding. I mean, the plaintiff sits near the jury. It's just done that way. Do you think if it was not broadcast, would it be so emotional? That certainly has had an impact. The fact that it's been broadcast to the world has been, I mean, that has definitely impacted the case. It makes it clearer to the jury that this is a very important case. It raises the level of the case. It in and of itself definitely has an impact. The reason why it was allowed is it's considered to be essential that you have open courtrooms and that people be able to see the judicial process at work. So, all right. I am out of time, and I really appreciate you all coming. Please be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you back. We talk about the intersection of law and life. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.